So here we are, back in Shroud Hearth Barrow, at the door that we deliberately didn't have the key for last time, obviously.
Yes.
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 Yes. And of course, as you can hear, I'm joined by the wonderful Liv. Liv, where was the key for Shroud Hearth Barrow?
It was in my safe in Solitude, so I had to go home and fetch it.
Can you just bring up the map to show us how far away Solitude is, just for those people who don't know? So we're currently, obviously, in Shroud Hearth Barrow.
There?
Yep, current location, yep. That's where we are. And Solitude is all the way
Right there.
over there. There we go. Okay, cool. But was it nice, going back home, seeing your family?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Got to give the kids some allowances.
Uh-huh.
Said hi to the wife.
Yeah.
Got some food.
Okay, but we're here and we haven't had to use a cheat to get through the door. That's the crucial thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's proceed through the door.
Yes.
Feels like a game show.
And as we can see, I have also dismantled the trap.
You have, yes.
Cut me last time.
It did. That cunning trap. That cunning, subtle, not obvious in any way trap.
Nope.
No, exactly.
Or just doomsday device.
Uh-huh.
I also killed a draugr.
Oh, you did, didn't you? Okay, well
Yes.
done. So, so through here then, since you've been in here and killed a draugr already, have you? Do you get a sense of having passed through beyond? So what we were just in was seemingly a slightly mundane or sort of almost like office space with little rooms for doing work and stuff like that, multi-levels, and a small private space as well. Is this? Does it feel as though you've gone into yet another layer of, as it were, privacy in terms of the catacombs, or?
I would say so. Also, there's a distinct difference in how you have to approach this part of the dungeon. If we look on what we went through in the past, because everywhere else the trap comes after you open the door.
Yeah. Whereas here it's before the door. Yeah.
Indeed. So you have to survive that.
Yeah.
Open the door, and then turn off the trap.
Or
it's not even that much of a trap. It's more of like
well,
a home-seated.
Well, actually, in that sense, given that we were just saying how obvious the trap is, going back to this idea that we were building on last time with the notion of seals and sealing in the draugr, do you think that maybe actually that's not for humans? That's actually for draugr, perhaps, to stop them coming into this.
Or it's like when you're in an office and you have already like gone into like the staff section of an office, and then you come to a door that says private or security.
Yeah.
It's just another of do not enter.
Yeah, exactly. Do not enter.
No.
I need one of those on my office door. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, let's proceed then. Was that the draugr's axe on the floor there?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And here we can see the chain that you pull to deactivate the access.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's just inside of the door.
Right. So actually, in terms of flow, then this is designed. You deactivate on your way out of this space.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't deactivate it before you go in. That's interesting.
No.
Okay. So that is keeping people out then, as opposed to
Yes.
in. Yeah. Okay. So what can we see in here then?
We have some more spaces to put to dead. And we have. This is also, for me at least, speaking of this place being meant to be approached from this direction.
Yeah.
Because you have these two statues here. You have the chain to deactivate the chains or the access. But if you come from this angle, it's really mundane.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. So it's almost as though it's building to a sort of crescendo of going into that space that's through the door, as opposed because it's interesting because we've approached what was that central hub where we also had things like the braes and the sort of almost meeting space, I guess, that was filled with lots of Draugr.
Yeah.
So we've approached that from the entrance, and this feels like, yes, you almost approach that space from deeper within as well. Two different ways of approaching.
It's almost like you came in through the wrong way.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. That's something to bear in mind as we proceed, I suppose.
Yes. Another trap.
Mm-hmm. Yes, with the curious marking.
And that would make that thing swing and smash me.
Now, this is something that I've been doing a little bit of work and research on since part 1 of Shroud Hearth Barrow, and that is, in the real world, how often it is that we actually do come across booby-trapped tombs. And it turns out that there are places that are sometimes seemingly incidentally booby-trapped, not necessarily deliberately. But the idea of a mechanical booby trap, for example, in the real world, is very rare indeed. I mean, some of the booby traps that we tend to find are things where perhaps there's been a poisonous powder laid down, for example. So if someone tries to creep through an area to disturb a tomb, then they're going to get deaded. Whereas this is such an elaborate way of defending the space that you have to wonder, as you know, as we have been wondering so far in this tomb, you have to wonder how and why Spate takes so much time to install all of these mechanics.
Absolutely.
I mean, did you have any thoughts on that in terms of it is quite elaborate? You know, it's quite a deal.
It is, and it also feels like. I mean, it takes a lot of engineering doing that. It takes a lot of manpower. It takes a lot of resources.
Well, because in this instance, you've got to forge a metal gate. You've got to make it dangerous. You've got to install a ratcheted post. You've got to have that so that it resets automatically. So if a rat or something goes over the trigger, it's an awful lot of effort to put into this. And I guess increasingly we've got this weird tension between what we were seeing towards the beginning of the tomb, this idea of maybe keeping the Draugr in. But it feels like from here on we're getting more and more of a sense of, I mean, that's probably the most active and dangerous literally in your face trap we've seen so far. And this is keeping us from proceeding. If we don't know what's happening, or if we're not one of the initiated, we're going to get impaled on a fence.
Indeed.
It makes you wonder, I suppose, what's also beyond this point as well.
And also, this fence grate thingy is wide enough to cover the whole walkway.
Yeah.
So you have to move it aside to get through once you've been impaled.
Yeah.
So it's also activating like a second door.
It is, yeah. Or indeed a very graphic warning. If your friend Bob gets
by a fence.
Oh no, yeah, he got fenced. Okay, well, on we go, I suppose. Although I do love the idea of someone having, been a bit nervous about coming in here in the first place, and their friend just goes, well, he always was on the fence about coming here. A fitting end. Some elaborate lighting now, a bit of a sort of a brazier chandelier. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel as elaborate as the second part that we went through last time, with all the wall carvings and stuff.
So could this be that we're approaching what I like to sometimes refer to as more honest architecture? So like Durham Cathedral is one of my favourite cathedrals in Britain, not least because I used to go in there all the time, but also because it's got a facade on the outside that's very elaborate. It's very kind of approaching Gothic, but it's not Gothic really. But the inside is very Norman. It's very chunky. It's very functional architecture. And do you think maybe that we're getting here towards the older, less elaborate, more functional versions of this architecture?
I also feel
Less
like we
flowery.
might have walked past those parts of the dungeon where potential visitors were supposed to go.
Okay, so someone's coming to maybe consult on a recently deceased family member,
Exactly.
and they wouldn't have made it
I mean,
down
we
here.
did have that big room with the altar and the very elaborate setup.
Yes, where you could chain initiates to. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, reminds me of our living room. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, but it just feels as though we're coming into more private spaces, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh. Now, what what on earth is going on here? This looks like a. Considering we were just saying this is a simpler form of architecture, which it seems to be a bit more chunky, a little bit less flowery and elaborate. This is a lot of effort to go to create this space. It's a tall space. It's got the flowing water. It's got a dropping drawbridge seemingly up there. I mean, I don't know. Do you think they've redirected an existing aquifer or something, or?
I mean, we do have the river going on top, so it could be that you're just like building around the environment. That the river was seeping through here anyway, and to be able to do what you wanted to do, you had to redirect flow and control it.
Okay. That said, though, I suppose with the drawbridge, it just occurs to me that maybe this is even if that is the case, even if it's a matter of an underground water source was present and it was a bit inconvenient, so they had to control it. Do you think that maybe actually it also serves as a form of, again, a barrier, a break between spaces as well? So if you do have that drop down drawbridge, the drawbridge has to be spanning something. So maybe they turned a geological inconvenience into another security measure.
Indeed. I mean, we can see a barred gate behind the drawbridge as well. And some kind of puzzle.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So now, how to cross the drawbridge?
We start by killing this guy.
Okay. So there's me presuming you'd have to do that. Those pillars to open that door.
No, it was apparently unlocked. Just very well guarded.
Excellent. Now this is where we come back to one of these perennial hazards of being an archaeologist in Skyrim, fighting the Draugr. I mean, do you think that you'd have to do at least a magical minor or something in your degree? You'd have to have some sort of
that, or have some fighting background. Like, I mean, you could survive on just potions and a bloody good axe, but
well, in that case, do you think it would be possible to be a Skyrim archaeologist and be a pacifist?
Not for a very long time.
Yeah, you could be like, I don't want to kill you. Yeah, exactly. Because yeah.
We should not make them upset. Okay, sure. If you can talk to the Draugr, please do. It might be possible if you're insanely good at sneaking and illusion magic.
Okay, yeah. So
they don't see you coming.
But then I suppose you're straying into the realms of an anthropologist, trying to observe the Draugr in their natural habitat.
Indeed.
Yeah. Which
But you could do some archaeology while doing that.
Yep. But then you've got an awful lot going on at once. Trying to survive, trying to sneak, trying to observe. Yeah. Okay. So what's in this room then? We have a spot in the middle.
Let's see what happens. Oh. It's the solution to the puzzle. Outside, so the puzzle should be
whale
dropping a bridge.
Okay.
So
another whale.
Let's see what's behind here.
That's a eagle. Was it?
Fish. Okay.
Eagle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what's that one? Snake?
Yeah, it's a snake.
And then I think it was a fish at the other end.
A fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So.
Now, just before we leave the room, what? This is elaborate, isn't it? This is extremely elaborate.
Yes, that is some high tech.
In terms of password protection, having spinning walls with carved faces in the mouths of which are the symbols for the puzzle just outside the door. That is elaborate.
Also, you can only get them spinning by standing on one exact point in the room.
Yeah.
Because if I stand here, spinning, spinning, it stops. So, if you don't know that, you're going to. Yeah, it's so elaborate.
It's just so incredibly elaborate, and again, this is one of those weird situations where I guess as an in-game archaeologist, you've got to try and understand the purpose of this beyond it simply having been a puzzle designed by a game developer.
Yeah.
for a player who's exploring the world of Skyrim.
Indeed. And I mean, from that perspective, this is upping the ante.
Yeah.
This goes beyond finding where to pull a string or how to disarm a trap or how to get past so you can pull the chain.
Yeah. So here you have a river, you have a drawbridge, you have presumably an intentionally guarded Draugr room because it was a scourge. So again, upping the ante in terms of enemy. And then you have, the password hidden in a very particular and elaborate way as well. Yeah. Again, it just makes you wonder what's further ahead, I suppose. And
indeed. And also remember that this comes straight after the room where the swinging axe were placed before the door.
Yeah.
That you need a special key to get through.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
Like the context to that is do not go here.
Yeah. But also though that said though, it is do not enter, do not come into this space. But it's also clearly it is possible to pass through this space.
Yeah.
They could have just caused a rock.
You need to know this.
Yeah, exactly.
These things, and you need to be able to walk through these steps.
Yeah. See, it's becoming more and more elaborate in terms of people with the knowledge, people with essentially, what you might call secret knowledge, will be able to proceed.
Also, I would say people with the skill.
Yeah.
Because that Draugr was clearly set there to guard.
Yeah. Okay.
There wasn't any resting place for him, I think, inside of there.
No, I don't think so.
No. He isn't standing on a pedestal. He isn't doing he doesn't have a space to lay down and be dead.
And be dead. You just lie here and be dead. Exactly. Yeah, so it is very much upping the ante. So, okay, if we solve the puzzle then, what...
yes.
Presumably that's going to lower the drawbridge, isn't it? Surely.
I think so. I just need to...
So, yeah, eagle...
Eagle, right? Yeah.
Snake, fish. So, fish, eagle, snake, fish.
Yeah. Woo! Excuse me, I see a Draugr. This is also where you need good perception to be an archaeologist in Skyrim. And some fancy skill with a bow will also help.
You see, there's just so many elective extras if you want to be an archaeological student of Skyrim. Maybe it's good. Maybe this is one of those things where it helps to be a mature student who's possibly spent some time out in the wilderness.
Yeah, I'm thinking that they might have some life experience requirements.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have spent like a year doing something else before you get accepted to become an archaeologist.
Uh-huh. What's interesting though is that on the other side of the bridge you have that stone throne though. I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that that could be a place for example, a Draugr to sit and watch, or?
I mean, we do see that in other dungeons.
Yeah, yeah.
That they are waiting or observing from those bases. We also found a huge healing potion on this side of the bridge, which might suggest that this is also meant for as a space for whoever who has ventured this far to be able to catch their breath.
Yeah, yeah. So a place to pause before proceeding. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so yeah, because actually there wasn't, because that's the point. There wasn't a Draugr sat on that chair, so
Indeed.
so yes, it makes sense for it to be a little, almost like a first aid station. You've made it this far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you're a priest of ours, even if you're supposed to be here, you might have taken some damage.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Or for reflection, who knows? Maybe it's a meditation spot.
Contemplation.
I mean, it's a quite nice spot to be resting.
Yeah, you could contemplate the waterfall. Yeah.
Indeed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a quite nice spot.
It is, yeah. Okay, okay.
And then we have another trap.
Indeed, another in-your-face metal fence
Mm-hmm.
with the switch right next to the door. Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's have a break, take it, have a Kit Kat, and then get smashed in the face by a metal fence. But again, this architecture is different to what has come, what was further earlier on in the tomb, in the barrow.
Also, right after the metal fence, we have an active tripwire.
Yeah, what happens if you trip it?
Stones!
Oh no.
So you get smashed in the face,
Uh-huh.
you trip on the tripwire, and then you get rocks rolled at you.
Is this the Home Alone section of the tomb?
This is where the designer just looked at his 9-year-old and went, I'm taking a break. So just draw some things.
Yeah.
Feel included.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What is it? He says in the Home Alone. Is it you guys give up, but you're thirsty for more?
But then again, we're coming up to this station now. We're back at those elaborate wall carvings.
We are, yeah. Another echo of approaching a throned figure. With the dead as also presumably being offered up.
Mm-hmm.
Are these royal dead again? Are they wearing crowns?
Yes, they are.
Interesting.
Although this dead seems to be leaning on his elbows, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think that's isn't that a fairly common, just in the real world, that's a fairly common sort of pose for a dead person, like a knight or something, isn't it? To have their hands up in contemplation almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they're doing yoga.
You don't?
No. Draugr yoga. Oh, there you go. You should start a Draugr yoga class in Gothenburg, and it would be so popular.
Well, we could maybe have some kind of mashup with the zombie walks.
Yeah. That could work.
And that's also, we see a difference. Like, you have this elaborate thing, and then the whole way down to the door seems kind of plain, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
It's not the square, elaborately decored hallway that we had before.
No. Well, and what's interesting is that it's almost it starts to feel a little bit as though you have these spaces that are somewhat punctuated almost. So you have a plain space and then a sort of a full stop that's quite elaborate, and then a plain space and a full stop that's quite elaborate. And in that sense, do you think that there's an element here of, because we were just talking about that resting station and maybe contemplation, that maybe a little bit like, well, actually like the steps to High Hrothgar, where you have these meditation points, these little reflections, that actually someone processing through here, maybe bringing someone like a king or something to be buried at these points. Perhaps there's an element of prayer or an element of reciting some sort of liturgy or something.
It could be possible. I also noticed that, do you remember from the last section that I pointed out that one of these reliefs and the entrance to that hallway was perfectly lined up? I don't think this one is.
No, it's not. It's much more wonky. Yeah. Which again...
This seems more like a natural tunnel.
A modified natural cave, yeah.
Let's see what you can see when you come from the door. You see it, but you do not see it from head on.
No. It's tantalizing.
It's telling you what's up ahead, but it's not the main. It's not the main focal point.
No, not at all. No, that is interesting.
Which is intriguing from an archaeological perspective.
Well, it is, but also I think it probably fits in quite nicely with this idea of a less refined, less elaborate architecture. As I say, a more honest kind of, well, this used to be a cave and we're just going to work with the wonk. Work with the wonk. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt, surely. As long as it doesn't sound too filthy.
Just make it in capital letters.
Yeah, work with the wonk.
Shall we enter Shroud Hearth depths?
Yeah. So wow. So now we're entering the depths. Blimey.
Yeah.
Blimey. So is this halfway through the barrow then?
No.
Or is this more than halfway? Do you think?
No, I can see like lots of tombs and stuff.
Oh.
So this should be the last third.
So is this the ultimate destination then of those people who are being carried all the way through the tomb?
I would imagine so. And this is quite an entrance.
It is. It really is. But also, it looks as though you have. There's a lot going on here. So you have the entrance, which is quite elaborately carved. Then you have what almost looks like gradiated spots for tombs. So even in this very special, very deep, very very well protected space, there's still room for a bit more hierarchy, which is quite interesting. But then also you have water coming back into play as well, where it's not
and fire.
This isn't and fire. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this isn't. This is not actually simply redirecting inconvenient streams. This is actually part of the impact of the room, isn't it? As you enter,
it is.
You have a strong sense of wanting to sort of highlight, punctuate, reinforce the space, force you to stop and think, perhaps.
Absolutely.
About what you're looking at.
And it also, it cuts the room into sections where you can be and where you can't be.
Well, exactly, yeah. I suppose, yes, you cannot be on the water, so that means you can only view it from certain places, which actually reinforces this sense of hierarchy as well, heading up to the top there.
Indeed. And you have to walk through these rows of coffins and the dead to be able to pass forward.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then you come up to an altar.
Now, obviously, we've got coffin lids popped off as well.
Yeah.
So they've. Do you think they've become Draugr? Do you think maybe some of the old occupants you've murdered on the way down?
Probably.
But that's just how Skyrim archaeology goes.
Yeah. But you need to walk through there. You need to walk past them. You come to an altar, and then you can walk up the stairs.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very rigid.
Yeah.
In how you're supposed to approach the space.
Well, it's almost in that sense, it's like a red carpet, isn't it? It's like this is the prescribed direction. This is the prescribed area for well, presumably for. Because it's not just the people who are coming to visit as well. This would be how people approach when they are depositing the dead as well.
Indeed.
And you can't deviate from that by definition of the design. Definitely. What do you think is going on with those slightly raised platforms then?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it looks. There's coffins on them as well.
Mm-hmm. Is there any evidence of collapsed floors or? Oh, actually, you can get to them from spiraling wooden walkways. That's interesting. But the wooden walkways are not as permanent as the stone. So presumably, eventually, just going with what we were talking about last time in terms of the wood will rot. Presumably, eventually, these platforms will be isolated as well. If we're talking about where you can and cannot go, these two, almost like mushrooms of rock jutting out of the water.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how do you reckon that works in terms of hierarchy then? If we're talking about the floor, the dance floor almost, where you have most coffins, and then you have these two isolated ones.
I would, given the location of those two, I'm going to go over to one of them because I think I can spot a bow, which would give us some potential context.
Okay. Now it is worthwhile just acknowledging for people watching and listening, there is a little bit of lag at my end. So at the moment it's about 5 or 6 seconds. So if I don't comment on something immediately, that's the reason. But this will happen if you're streaming across the North Sea.
Indeed, it will.
Oh, so we actually have. Or I've just noticed, sorry, that we have actual bodies still in these coffins then.
Yes.
Ah, so why are the lids off them then? I wonder.
Potential looters, maybe.
Okay, looters. Yeah, that's a good reason. Yeah.
I mean, we are in game exploring this tomb to find an adventurer that lost his way and never came back.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's another research question then for the broader archaeological survey is why do people now loot these tombs? Because popping back to another sort of real world example, you have sometimes people, I think rather uncharitably, but nonetheless, people describing people, say, from Egypt who loot Egyptian tombs as somehow betraying their own past, or even actually having. I've heard people describe it as almost like a colonial enforcement of values, as though someone else is forcing them to do this because of a market value of the material within. And so, if you apply this to this context here, what do you think that the people who currently live in and around Shroud Hearth Barrow, if they are coming here and opening the tombs and maybe taking treasures, that they are betraying their ancestors, or do you think that this is more of they don't necessarily feel directly connected to this tomb, and therefore actually what they're doing is essentially reacting to that sense of market value of whatever might be down here?
I would think the latter. I also would say that in regards of this barrow is particularly, I would not suspect the locals to be the ones doing the looting, but outsiders coming in and entering.
Yeah.
Due to the old myth of the place being haunted and the locals apparent unwillingness to go in and look for this lost adventurer themselves.
Yeah. Well, also, actually, as well, again, we need to remember that this is one of the reasons why we're here in the first place, is because this is one of the first barrows you come across on the way to climbing the mountain to High Hrothgar. So you would have had you would have an awful lot of foot traffic coming past the tomb. And I know we established in part 1 that it's not directly on the road, but people would know it was here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hidden.
No, it's not. No. Okay.
And also, I think also you have to remember that the dragon cult, which is the ones that were practitioners in these barrows, aren't a part of the living society of Skyrim.
No, they're not. No.
It's an ancient culture.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. See, I'm being a little bit sort of a little bit tongue in cheek when I ask that question, so much as I do know that there is a separation. But also, that said, though, in the comments on part 1, and incidentally, we really should thank people for their lovely comments that we got on.
They
part
are
1.
Lovely. I was so happy to see them. Really insightful.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we should have acknowledged that for earlier. Actually, sorry. But in those comments, it was pointed out that there are tombs where there is much more obvious interaction between the current inhabitants of Skyrim and these tombs, and so presumably what we're going to see as we go from tomb to tomb is differing levels of relevance, you might call it, between the current Skyrim population and this ancient cult, but also in the context of the history of Skyrim. I guess it's worth, we would know as Skyrim archaeologists that there was a time when dragons enslaved humans, and humans were essentially worshipping them and burying their dead in accordance with this. And that's actually interesting, because I guess it's worthwhile bearing that in mind, in so much as what is the ultimate value and goal of this sort of practice, and as we go into other tombs as well, in terms of that dragon hierarchy. Why on earth do you think the dragons care how these humans bury their dead, or not?
I do not know many dragons, but the ones that I have met within the Skyrim and the other Elder Scrolls games, they do not seem to care that much.
No.
I know one dragon that instills some hierarchy, and that's simply to keep itself hidden. I'm trying not to spoil too much.
No, exactly. Yeah.
From a 10-year-old game.
Yeah. But yes, I suppose there's a dragon there that has a benevolent relationship with humans, but that is symbiotic in some respects, because it hides itself on the mountain as well. Yeah. But okay, interesting. But on this, so standing up here on these raised platforms, then you get a sense of actually being almost at the same height as that focal point, as that highest tomb there, but nonetheless still separated. And I wonder if this is a sort of almost like a lieutenant position, I guess.
I would think so. I would also say that these might have some defensive properties.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Since we find a bow, and a bow would be very useful for keeping off invaders in here.
Okay, well, so actually, maybe we should be thinking about these tombs then in the context of something interesting. Just occurred to me. In the real medieval world, especially in Christian cemeteries, you would have people buried such that when they popped out of the ground at the end of days, they would be ready to receive mass, and so the vicar, or priest rather, would be buried in the opposite direction. So instead of facing east, he'd be facing west.
Yeah.
With a cup in his hands. And I like the idea, almost like a pop-up book, just whoop. Although I have to say, if I'd just come back from the dead, the last thing I want to do would be listen to a Latin mass. But this is the medieval world.
You don't get to choose.
You don't get to choose. No, exactly. No. But maybe actually what we've got here is people who are being deposited with an understanding that there is this potential for Draugr magic and Draugrism. Can you call it that? I guess. Or at least some form of resurrection, and the people on, as you say, on the higher platforms, maybe they are deposited with bows, because maybe there'll be an element of defense and protection, or well, see, that raises the question: what are they defending, and what are they would they be defending against? I guess. But it's interesting, though.
I think we will find that answer if we head further in.
Uh-huh. So just to establish what the lag is like then, what are you currently looking at?
I'm currently shooting a potential Draugr.
Oh yeah, no, not yet, not for me. You've looked into a very nice tomb though. Oh, there you go, now you're shooting him. Oh dear. Now that is not best practice when it comes to dealing with human remains.
No, it's not. Do not take this as a query in how you do archaeology in the real world.
So it just says, so have you filled out the context sheet? No, but I kicked him in the head. That skeleton's not getting up again.
Well, I imagine that me as a Skyrim archaeologist would fill out the context sheet afterwards.
I see.
When I know they're not going to stab me.
I see, and then you have to establish, so these wounds are, it's not so much peri-mortem or post-mortem, but they're kind of pre-post-mortem life.
So these are excavation wounds.
Yeah. And then, what was it? Was it a trowel? No, bow and arrow. Yeah.
I just needed to make sure it was dead.
Oh dear. I love the idea of being a Skyrim archaeologist. Definitely. It would make context sheets more interesting.
It would.
You'd have to tick whether or not you'd killed it.
Did it come back to life?
Although it raises all sorts of, I mean, as I was saying just before, in terms of the fact that the dead can walk, it raises interesting questions as to the intact nature of the context of the deceased.
Yeah.
The story of that burial, so on and so forth. So you'd have there'd be just reams of paperwork. Well, yes, this guy, yes, technically I killed him and he landed here, but he was meant to be in that tomb over there, and I'm pretty sure he was holding... But I took the knife.
It was very good.
It was a lovely knife, and then I used it to stab that Draugr over there.
I would also imagine that you would have some old professor that you report back to, who might not have been in the field for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that classical, they know best practice.
Well, yeah,
even though they're
but also that you'll have like a progression of Skyrim archaeological theory, so a bit like processualism and post-processualism. You'll have this thing of maybe there'll be a decade when beardy archaeologists with sort of hippie jumpers are just kind of no, we don't want to kill the Draugr. We want to, we go back.
Or imagine a decade where they're like, nah, we all know that we need to shoot them before we go in there, so don't write that down.
Oh yes, actually yes. Yeah, and then future scholars are having to go, well, this was when they weren't bothering to record whether or not they had actually killed them or not. Yeah. That would be a nightmare in terms of also, in terms of potential forgery.
I mean, imagine going back and trying to analyze those remains from an old excavation.
Yeah.
And when you can't know, like, is this wound from when the person was actually killed or when the archaeologists killed it?
Exactly. Yeah, when the archaeologists killed it. Yeah. Oh dear. Okay, I think we've lingered on this far too long. Let's go. Let's move on.
Yes.
Oh dear.
So we're coming up to another bridge.
Okay. Yep.
Leading up into a tunnel.
Yes.
And that tunnel seems very natural.
It does, doesn't it?
Just some support beams.
Yeah.
What I can see. No decoration.
Yeah, so maybe some very light shaping of the rock, but yeah. Apart from that, yeah. Interesting. This feels almost like a mine shaft, actually.
It does. Though it leads up to something that's clearly guarded. And a huge treasure chest.
Oh, very nice. Not quite there yet. There we go. Yes. Oh, yes. Nice.
This is so strange.
Oh, so now you appear. So you go through a incredibly basic little tunnel into an incredibly elaborate space.
Indeed.
Interesting. I'm really not sure what to make of that in terms of interpretation, though.
No.
Because also we've just passed beyond what felt like a real. Again, in terms of these punctuations, yeah, that room with all the different tombs was much more like an exclamation mark than a full stop.
Yeah.
But then again, I suppose this room here, though, looking at the back of the room, you do have a wall with dragon writing on. So this is essentially this is the culmination. This is the focus of the entire space, isn't it? The entire tomb.
Indeed.
So maybe that last little rough tunnel, that little mine shaft, is almost like passing through the last little curtain in terms of the shrine. You know, I'm thinking about the Holy of Holies, this kind of thing, where there'll be something that's just so mundane and so, but also at the same time so inaccessible to the public that it doesn't have to be anything other than something simple like a tunnel or like a curtain or something to separate. So presumably, maybe one in 50 people actually get to go beyond that previous room into this room, perhaps.
I would also like to add that I don't see any tombs in this room.
No, yeah, this is not a place for the dead. There's that room that's full of tombs, and then beyond that you have this place. And maybe that's exactly because this idea, if you were saying how you had these two raised plinths where you have potential archers who might come back from the dead and be ready to defend. Maybe what they're defending is this space where there are no dead.
That makes much more sense.
Well, so therefore, actually, is that mining tunnel a bit of a bottleneck? It also makes
sense
then, do you think?
in the dragon cult way of thinking, because the word and that the dragon has given to you, that is on that wall, that magical tomb, would be the dragon's gift to you as a cult.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it?
And thus probably the focus of your religious practice.
Yeah, and so again, you have that you similar to that analogy of having something that's so holy, if you want to use that word, that it has to be separated and sealed off, and in that sense, I think that mine tunnel also operates in terms of defence as a bottleneck. You can't have lots of people coming in and approaching from there, so they have to go through that big space where the approach is controlled by water, where there's almost a choke point of the dead, but also maybe the recently reawoken who are ready to murder you, and then you have to try in order to get through this little tunnel to get into this space here. Do you think that the big treasure chest, I mean, obviously in terms of game design, that is something of a pre-climax to the tomb treat, basically. You get to open that and see what's inside. But do you think that would be a similar that operates similarly to?
Knowing what I know about dragons, I would assume that might be some kind of offering spot for the dragon.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, if we look at
actually, possibly even payment before you can approach the word or the words.
Indeed.
So what we're going to say?
So. I was just going to say that if we're going to continue not to spoil things, in the place where that dragon has a symbiotic relationship to the humans, you actually leave, or you can choose to leave, objects for those humans still living in the symbiotic relationship to the dragon in a similar chest outside of their place.
Well, and in fact, actually, and I think it's worthwhile saying, again, I don't think this is spoiling much, but it's worth saying that the Greybeards in what is essentially a great big abbey, a monastic community. That it's clear that there are people who go back up and down and who drop off food for them to continue, and so some of that would be to sustain their these human priests, I suppose. But also, I guess you have this sense of certainly in terms of the approaching the very peak of the mountain. There are things that have to be done before you get there. There are prices that have to be paid, and so this feels sort of in line with that. I mean, what's actually inside the treasure chest?
Nothing anymore.
Oh, I see. Because you've emptied it. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Which also is bad archaeological practice.
Yeah, there's nothing in there anymore. Okay. Cool. Well, interesting. But presumably, though, I guess what we can say is what you found, what was in there useful enough to take it, or interesting enough to take it. And,
yeah. I mean, you usually find armor. You usually find weapons.
Yeah.
Means of protecting yourself or becoming more powerful.
Yeah. Healing potions, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Often enough, you found awful a lot of coin. Yeah. All which is great tribute.
Yeah. So throughout this whole Shroud Hearth Barrow, given that this is the Grand High Poobah, this is the thing that everyone's focused on, trying to either protect or maybe visit if they're allowed to. Do you think then that what we see is this element of potentially sealing off the outside from the inside, but also do you think that this notion of punctuating stages of access holds water? Do you think this is something that we should try and test and apply to future tombs when we visit those ones?
I think so, and I also think that we can see, because I'm intrigued about the point you made about a price needing to be paid to get access to the knowledge. And that could also be what parts of the tomb are.
Yeah.
That you have to prove yourself to be able to access.
Well, also, prove to be worthy of this knowledge, of these words. Because also, it's worthwhile saying that because when you approach the wall there, what you've got is dragon script, which the reason it looks the way it looks is because of it's written with dragon claws, isn't it? It's like this is how the dragons write onto walls and things. But it's there's one word when you as the end-game Dragonborn approach it. That's the word that you learn. But the whole wall is covered in script. So this would have been almost like a verse or a chapter or something of wisdom that presumably people, if they're coming here and they're wanting access to it, they would want to read the whole thing. It's not it's not like you just come here for a word. Interesting. So if we approach it, then is there any other sense of? Well, obviously we have to cross the bridge to get there. So again, that's another little separation.
Yeah. And you also always have these kind of almost like a pair of cupped hands holding the scripture.
Yeah, like a raised. Well, again, it doubles down on the privacy aspect. You can't view this from more than one angle, really, or very many angles. Yes, and all of the elaborate carving, focusing in on what is a few lines of text. But nonetheless, we're still, though, in this space, looking at architecture that is that more cave-like feeling to it. So it feels as though they probably started with this in a cave and then worked outwards, and the architecture got more and more elaborate over time.
Absolutely.
The maybe even the function of the space evolved from being a place where they stored a sacred dragon text to being a place where they buried the dead, or where they buried the dead to defend the text, perhaps.
And I would also say that there is the possibility of the burrow expanding as time goes by, because you get more dead.
Yeah.
You have a longer lineage of people being buried there.
Yeah.
Which also can explain differentiating styles throughout the barrow.
Yeah. Well, and also as well, the dead presumably become increasingly more dangerous as well.
Yes, because they're older.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have to have sections. So right at the beginning of Shroud Hearth Barrow, where it felt much more. In fact, you had these places like a little office, and you had a slightly more mundane sense of dealing with the recently deceased, putting them up on the wall or something, or into a catacomb sort of recess. That stuff is only possible because all of this really dangerous, really arcane material is behind multiple layers of protection and booby traps and doors and and water and drawbridges and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, interesting. And that's very similar. Again, another sort of real world analogy would be is it Augustinian monks? I think it's Augustinians who felt that they had a part of their purpose was to commune with the public. So they had sections of their abbeys and their monasteries that were specifically halls where the public could come in, maybe get some medical treatment, get food or advice and this kind of thing. And so maybe actually that's an element of what's going on here, whether it's for the current occupants of Skyrim or whether it's for the ancient. I presume it's probably going to be for the ancient people who were probably in and around this cult when they were current. But again, maybe there's an element there as well, where you could have people visiting at the front of the tomb and sort of, maybe getting a balm or something to start the embalming process. And actually we saw right at the top of the tomb, right at the beginning, before you even enter in the dome, you see the beginning of this with embalming tables, don't you? So I think that there's definitely a story, and I think hopefully this story and these processes will become clearer the more tombs we look at.
I also want to point out one of the most interesting parts, which makes total sense in a game mechanic kind of sense, and raises a very interesting question as archaeologists, is that when you come out of these most holy of sanctum, you always have a secret passage that is at the entrance of the tomb or the barrow. So in terms of gameplay, this serves as a quick exit after having gone through the long and arduous route to get to where you're going. But also, actually, I suppose that works from a secret knowledge standpoint. Absolutely.
All of this stuff will have been. It's like a sally port on a castle where people can sneak out, but only the people who live in the castle hopefully know it's there. But also, actually, there are monastic precedents for this stuff as well. So you'll have people access points or delivery points in terms of material, because this isn't a well-maintained tunnel. It's collapsing and everything. This isn't presumably once it's built, it's not like they bring in masons regularly to fix the thing. This is a very secret space, and it emerges into the hearth room.
Indeed.
Interesting, very interesting.
Which also speaks to, this table that you see in the hearth room, that's the same age as the burrow and the room itself. So that would suggest that table was there at a time when this secret tunnel might have been used far more often.
Yeah, for quick access, yeah. Yeah.
And then you can elaborate on the usage back then.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, I suppose in that sense, what you could say, in terms of flow, again, I guess, you could argue that maybe actually what you have is, whether or not it's about mediating access and secret knowledge, it could be as simple as I say, the older the section of the tomb, the more dangerous the Draugr, the longer they've been there. And so actually, if you do want to go and visit the wall, you have to have a quick way out. Quick way out. And maybe they knew that. Or maybe what we're looking at here is the secret entrance is the original entrance to that cave. Because with the collapse actually of the tunnel in the secret passage, and the fact that it is so roughshod in terms of it's not particularly well carved. You know, it hasn't been dressed. The stone hasn't. It's just very rough, and it's a cave tunnel. Maybe that is an original entrance, and maybe what we see then is an elaboration of the relationship between these different rooms over time that overrides that as an entrance.
It would also make sense to not expand the barrow in the direction of the word.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to disturb that space.
Yeah.
So you have to build around it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And that's it. Maybe that's something else to think about as well. So like, this is obviously, again, we have to acknowledge this is a gameplay feature. It's there so that you can get out quickly. But in terms of Skyrim world function, that's something to bear in mind for future tombs as well. Is whether or not actually what the access is like, because there are such situations where the shortcut emerges onto a 6 or 7 foot platform that you can't get in from. You can only leave through. So there's something to address there as well. But these are interesting questions that have been raised, definitely. And here we are are you trying to figure your way out again?
Yes. As always. It's a good thing that I have such a very, very high level, so I don't get bothered by those little.
Exactly. Yeah. You've worked hard to be able to archaeology like this.
Yeah. So if you would stop shooting at me, I would be very grateful.
Oh. Honestly.
Mark?
Yeah?
I would like you to appreciate my work.
I appreciate how high level you are, definitely.
I'm doing my best. It might not be enough.
See, and now we're back at this. But, in terms of this idea of this being an immediate test to whether or not you know how to get further on in the barrow, and whether or not you're allowed in, this is definitely reinforcing that. There we go.
I do not appreciate your tone.
You will respect my authority.
Indeed.
And of course the wooden steps potentially as a last resort, a burnable entrance point. And we leave the barrow. Excellent.
Yes.
So, all in all, I think that's been a fairly successful first survey.
Indeed.
I hope that the next barrows that we visit, we'll be able to start cross-comparing, making comparisons and describing or trying to understand what comes out of those comparisons. Because at the moment, I guess we're feeling around for a narrative and a logic that may become clearer when we see how some of these questions are answered in different locations, I guess. Because at the moment, this is how people in this place made this sort of tomb back then. And I guess once we see how people in different parts of the Skyrim map make these tombs, we may be able to see what's important and what's essential, I suppose, compared to what is simply convenience, I guess, in the location. In that sense, do you have a sense of which tomb you might want to go to next in terms of a strong contrast?
Not really. Maybe we could ask people in the comments to give us a suggestion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, let's do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So we'll probably try and record our next survey in roughly a week's time. So let's see if people come up with any interesting suggestions. I'm looking for a tomb that is in a different environment, so maybe much colder, perhaps, or wetter, or drier. I'm just trying to think of different locations, or higher or lower, this kind of thing. And maybe a tomb that has a different relationship with the exterior, and maybe we can see what's common and what's different compared to Shroud Hearth Barrow. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. So any final thoughts or comments then in terms of our first survey?
Well, coming out again,
Uh-huh.
I realized that if my sense of direction isn't completely wrong, they do actually have to redirect 2 rivers, because that dungeon cannot fit
No.
underneath everything here. I mean, you have one. Yeah, you have 2 rivers going through.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a lot of groundwater.
There's a lot of groundwater. Well, actually, just if you just go quickly just to the map, then just to try and understand the river flow, I guess. Where is that water going on the surface? Where is it flowing to?
One is flowing down here towards Mistwatch.
Uh-huh.
And coming out in Wilhelm.
Uh-huh.
And then the other goes past Treva's Watch, Heartwood Mill, and ends out in Riften.
So actually, I mean, obviously, you've raised this point about the engineering, I guess, in terms of redirecting groundwater. But actually, I mean, this is a major point in terms of water flow, where they've chosen to put this tomb as well. That's not really something that we identified, really, is it? We identified the mountain and the road when we initially came here, but actually, this could be something else to bear in mind as well. And so, if you're thinking about, in terms of, for example, British prehistory, one of the current ideas about Stonehenge is its relationship to the River Avon. I think it's the River Avon anyway, but a local river. And the flow of people, material, or some sense of spiritual energy from one place to another.
Absolutely.
And maybe actually this is flowing into the landscape to those other places, to places like Windhelm.
Absolutely. And also, you have, like, in most cases, if you look at the map, you have a tomb and it's fairly isolated from the other tombs.
Mm-hmm.
In Iverstead, you have 2 tombs very close to each other.
Yeah.
And very close to another place. So it seems to be some kind of something.
Some sort of focus point, yeah.
It's a high concentration.
Yeah, well, actually, and that second tomb seems to be on a river as well, or on one of the...
Yeah, exactly. It's on an island in the river.
Yeah.
You can actually see it from the top of this tomb. And that also, in a prehistory sense, kind of... Well, it makes sense that where these 2 rivers come together at the foot of the mountain, or where they start, depending on where the river starts and ends, that would be a focal point.
Yeah.
Since rivers are a very easy way of transportation when you don't have modern roads.
Well, actually, that's a good point. That's a very good point. It doesn't have to be... you don't have to invoke necessarily purely spiritual things. It could simply be, that in Skyrim's past, the road network, which presumably is an imperial introduction anyway in many respects, especially some of the straightness of the roads at places and the cobbled surface, that maybe actually rivers were a key transport point as well. Again,
and also I would like to point out that practicality and spirituality isn't exclusive of each other. I mean, it could be important spiritually because it's a good practical standard.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. You do it that way because it's the spiritually correct way to do it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So.
Okay, interesting. More interesting questions then to bear in mind for our future surveys. Thank you everyone at home for watching and listening to this. we continue to refine our process, and again, hopefully we're going to be able to refine the lag situation a little bit as well. But
yeah, hopefully.
But I'm very much enjoying this so far, and this is only part 2 of our first barrow. So we've just begun our journey together, and hopefully it's going to be a fun one. Thank you for your time as well this afternoon, Liv. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Excellent. Okay. Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.